Rostock, Polabian, Roztoc, Polish. Roztoc is the largest city in the North German state Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Rostock is on the Warnow River. The district of Warnemünde, 12 kilometers north of the city center, is directly on the Baltic Sea coast. Rostock is home to one of the oldest universities in the world, the University of Rostock, founded in 1419. The city territory of Rostock stretches for about 20 kilometers along the Warnow to the Baltic Sea. The largest built-up area of Rostock is on the western side of the river. The eastern part of its territory is dominated by industrial estates and the forested Rostock heath. Rostock is considered as the only Ratioopolis in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. History. Early history. In the 11th century, Polabian Slavs founded a settlement at the Warnow River called Roztoc. The name Rostock is derived from that designation. The Danish king Valdemar I set the town aflame in 1161. Afterwards the place was settled by German traders. Initially there were three separate cities: Altstadt around the altar marked with St. Petri, Mittelstadt around the Neue marked with St. Marian, and Neustadt around the Hopfen marked with St. Jacobi. In 1218, Rostock was granted Lübeck law city rights. Hanseatic League. The rise of the city began with its membership of the Hanseatic League, beginning in 1251. In the 14th century it was a powerful seaport town with 12,000 inhabitants and the biggest city of Mecklenburg. Ships for cruising the Baltic Sea were constructed in Rostock. The formerly independent fishing village of Warnemünde at the Baltic Sea became a part of Rostock in 1323, to secure the city's access to the Baltic Sea. In 1419, one of the earliest universities in Europe, the University of Rostock, was founded. 15th to 18th century. At the end of the 15th century, the Dukes of Mecklenburg succeeded in enforcing their rule over the town of Rostock, which had until then been only nominally subject to their rule and essentially independent. They took advantage of a riot known as Domfeder, a failed uprising of the impoverished population. Subsequent quarrels with the dukes and persistent plundering led ultimately to a loss of economic and political power. In 1565 there were further clashes with Schwerin that which had far-reaching consequences. Among other things, was the introduction of a beer excise that favored the dukes. John Albert I advanced on the city with 500 horsemen, after Rostock had refused to take the formal oath of allegiance, and had the city walls lighted in order to have a fortress built. Not until the First Rostock Inheritance Agreement of 21 September 1573, in which the state princes were guaranteed hereditary rule over the city for centuries, binding Rostock for a long time, and recognizing them as the supreme judicial authority, was the conflict ended. The citizens slighted the fortress the following spring. From 1575 to 1577 the city walls were rebuilt, as was the Lagebusch Tower and the Stein Gate in the Dutch Renaissance style. The inscription Sit intra te concordure publica felicitas, which can still be read on the gate, refers directly to the conflict with the Duke. In 1584 it finally came to the Second Rostock Inheritance Agreement, which resulted in a further loss of former tax privileges. At the same time, these inheritance contracts put paid to Rostock's ambition of achieving imperial immediacy as Lübeck had done in 1226. The strategic location of Rostock provoked the envy of its rivals. Danes and Swedes occupied the city twice, first during the 30 Years' War and again from 1700 to 1721. Later, the French, under Napoleon, occupied the town for about a decade until 1813. In nearby Lübeck, Ratioopolis surrendered to the French in 1806. This was only after furious street fighting in the Battle of Lübeck, in which he led some of the cavalry charges himself. The exhausted Prussians had, by the time of the surrender, neither food nor ammunition. 19th century. In the first half of the 19th century, Rostock regained much of its economic importance, at first due to the wheat trade, and from the 1850s, to industry, especially to its shipyards. The first propeller-driven steamers in Germany were constructed here. The city grew in size and population, with new quarters emerging in the south and west of the ancient borders of the city. Two notable developments were added to house the increasing population at around 1900. Stein to Vorstadt in the south, stretching from the old city wall to the facilities of the new Lloydbahnhof. It was designed as a living quarter and consists mostly of large single houses, once inhabited by wealthy citizens. Kropliner to Vorstadt in the west, designed to house the working population as well as smaller and larger industrial facilities such as Mahn and Ulrichs brewery. The main shipyard, Neptune, was nearby at the shore of the river. 20th century. In the 20th century, important aircraft manufacturing facilities were situated in the city, such as the Aerodoflugzeugwerke in Warnemünde and the Heinkel Works, with facilities at various places, including their secondary Heinkel Sud facility in Schwechat, Austria, the original Heinkel firm's Rostock facilities being named Heinkel Nord. It was at their facilities in Rostock, Marianne, that the world's first airworthy jet plane prototype made its test flights. Airplane construction ceased at the end of the Second World War. Because war industries like military aircraft manufacturers were located in the city, it became a target for Allied bombing in 1942 and 1944, and parts of the city were destroyed. After the Second World War reconstruction and subsequent extension, the city became a major industrial center of the German Democratic Republic, and the port served as the state's primary gate to the world. Much of the historic center has been faithfully rebuilt and much of its historic character restored. This includes several buildings characterized by vertical brick ribs, a style common to the Hanseatic towns. Following the reunification of Germany in 1990, Rostock lost its prior privileged position as the principal overseas port of the former GDR and became one of several German ports, now located in one of the least industrialized regions of reunited Germany. Despite large infrastructure investments, the city's economy declined in the 1990s but is now growing again. Rostock's population dropped from nearly 260,000 in 1989 to about 200,000 today, primarily due to suburbanization but also due to emigration to more prosperous western regions of Germany. Politics. District symbols. Rostock has had three different coats of arms, known as the signum, the secretum and the sigillum. The signum, which can be traced back to 1367, was developed last and is to this day the coat of arms of the city. The signum depicts a golden griffin on a blue background, with bars of silver and red, the colors of the Hanseatic League. Below, it can be seen not only on flags and houses, and at bus stops, but also on bridges, gullies, fences, ships and restaurants. Administration. Since the 13th century, the governing body of the city has been the City Council, first consisting of 10, later of 24 aldermen. The chairman of the city council was the city mayor. In the 19th century there were even 3 mayors. Since 1925, the head of the city has borne the title of Lord Mayor. Having been elected for centuries by the city council, he is now elected directly by the citizens of Rostock, following a reform in 2002. The city parliament represents the citizens. Representatives are elected for 5 years. The number of representatives is currently 53. 13 Linke, 10 SPD, 9 CDU, 5 Greens, 4 FDP, 4 für Rostock, Prob, 3 Rostocker Bund, 5 others. The city parliament is presided by the Präsident der Bürgerschaft. He heads and prepares the sessions and, together with the Lord Mayor, represents the city. Roland Methling was elected Lord Mayor of Rostock in the first round by 58.2% of the voters on the 27th of February 2005. Partner cities. Rostock has signed partnership agreements with the following cities: Szczecin, Poland, 1957. Turku, Finland, 1959. Dunkirk, France, the 9th of April 2000. Riga, Latvia, 1961. Antwerp, Belgium, 1963. Aarhus, Denmark, 1964. Bergen, Norway, 1965. Gothenburg, Sweden, 1965. Varna, Bulgaria, 1966. Rijeka, Croatia, 1966. Bremen, Germany, 1987. Dalian, People's Republic of China, 1988. Raleigh, North Carolina, United States, 2001. Guldborg Sund, Denmark, 2014. Rostock is a member of the international network New Hansa. Ratioopolis Rostock. Rostock is the first city-region that defines itself not only as a city in its boundaries, but as a Ratioopolis, with a super-regional sphere of influence. A Ratioopolis can be compared to a metropolis, but on a smaller scale. This is a sign for the inter-regional cooperation and economic dynamics that can be found in the Rostock area. A task force with different actors such as the Hanseatic city of Rostock, the administrative district of Rostock, the Regional Planning Association Middle Mecklenburg, Rostock, and the local business organizations are working on the promotion and advancement of the concept. Geography. Rostock is located nearly centrally on Mecklenburg-Vorpommern's Baltic Sea coast. The city is crossed by the Warnow. The seaside part of Rostock, Rostock-Warnemünde, is about 16 kilometers to the north of the historic city center. The west and the southeast are the most densely populated parts of town. The overseas port is to the east of Rostock. Rostock stretches 21.6 kilometers from the Baltic Sea to the south and 19.4 kilometers from east to west. Climate. Rostock has an oceanic climate typical of the South Baltic Sea region, and the climate has more in common with that found in southern Sweden and in Zealand, Denmark than the typical German oceanic climate that usually has milder winter days. Main sites. Rostock. One of the most picturesque places in Rostock is the Neue Markt, with the town hall, that was originally built in the 13th century in brick Gothic style, but extensively transformed in the 18th century, with the addition of a Baroque facade and a banqueting hall. The square also preserved 6 original, carefully restored gable houses from the 15th and 16th centuries. The other historical houses in Hanseatic style that once bordered the square were destroyed in an Allied air raid in 1942, and rebuilt in a simplified manner. The 15th-century Kirchhochhaus is considered the best preserved brick Gothic house in Rostock. St. Mary's Church Marienkirche on Ziegenmarkt is an imposing brick Gothic church. Built in the 13th century, it was enlarged and modified at the end of the 14th century into the present cross-shaped basilica. The huge tower was not completed until the end of the 18th century. Inside there is an astronomical clock built in 1472 by Hans Döringer. The main pedestrian precinct is Kropliner Strasse, that runs east from the Neue Markt to the 14th century Kropliner Tor, a former town gate. The main buildings of Rostock University lie at Universitätsplatz, near the middle of the street, in front of the lively fountain of Zest for Life. The Kloster St. Catherine Inn, an old Franciscan monastery founded in 1243, and extended several times during the 14th and 15th centuries, now used as the seat of the Academy of Music and Theatre. The brick Gothic Nikolai Kirche, which is the oldest church in Rostock, built in mid-13th century. Heavily damaged during World War II and subsequently restored, the building is now used as an exhibition center and concert hall, due to its outstanding acoustics. Some parts of the medieval city wall, with 4 city gates, have survived to the present day. Warnemünde is the seaside part of Rostock and a major attraction of the city. Locals and tourists alike enjoy the maritime flair of the old houses, a large beach, a lighthouse and the old fisherman port. Economy. The economy is mainly characterized by maritime industries, high-tech industries, the University of Rostock, tourism and the service sector. Major companies include maritime industry Caterpillar Inc., manufacturer of diesel engines for ships, Deutsche Seereederei Rostock, transport, cruises, property and tourism holding, F. Leisch, Neptune Werft, shipyard belonging to Meyer Neptune Group, Nordic Yards Warnemünde, shipyard belonging to Nordic Yards, Schiffs Electronic Rostock, Thamsen Maritime Shipyard. Other engineering Nordex SE, a major producer of wind turbines, Suzlon, world's fifth largest wind turbine manufacturers, Liebherr, manufacturer of cranes, tourism industry AIDA Cruises, German company for cruises, Scandlines, German-Danish ferry operator. Others Hanseatische Brauerei Rostock, German brewery belonging to the Utka Gruppe, IKEA, Rostock University Hospital, Yara International, supplier of plant nutrients. Furthermore, Rostock is one of the Baltic Sea's and Germany's largest ports. Education. Rostock is home to one of the oldest universities. Founded in 1419, the University of Rostock is the third oldest university in Germany in continuous operation, and one of the oldest universities of the world. It also maintains a botanical garden, the Botanische Garten Universität Rostock. The Academy of Music and Theatre offers graduate degrees in artistic fields. Founded in 1994, the institution combined the former drama school Ernst Busch and the Outpost School of the Hans Eisler Music School Berlin. Today, the school is a member of the Association of Baltic Academies of Music, a union of 17 music conservatories at the Baltic Sea and Israel. Unique in Europe is the postgraduate degree in piano duo performance. The school possesses a large opera stage and two chamber music halls. There are concerts every day through the whole year. Rostock hosts also the Max Planck Institute for Demographic Research, the Leibniz Institute for Catalysis, as well as two branches of Fraunhofer Institutes, one for computer graphic and one for large structures in production technology. Culture. Events. The city is home to the annual Hansa Sail Festival, during which many large sailing ships and museum vessels are brought out to sea, drawing over 1.5 million visitors. There is an annual jazz festival taking place in June called Ostsee Jazz. Museums and Zoo. Rostock Art Gallery, Museum of Cultural History, Stasi Museum, Warnemünde Local History Museum, Shipbuilding and Shipping Museum, Rostock Zoo, Walter Kempowski Archive, Sport Transport. Car. Rostock can be reached by motorway A1 from Hamburg via Lübeck on A20 and by A19 from Berlin and A20 from Stettin in Poland. Public transport. Rostock Hauptbahnhof offers fast rail connections to Hamburg and Berlin and from there to almost any other European city. Within the city, the Rostock tramway network is available, along with a wide network of buses and ferries. The first privately financed tunnel in Germany crosses the Warnow River and thus connects the eastern part of Rostock with the western part. Ferry ship. Rostock is Germany's largest Baltic port. Rostock is also home to a large ferry port. It is a main base for ferry operators Scandlines and TT Line, which both connect Rostock with major Scandinavian destinations. Furthermore, Rostock receives the highest numbers of cruise tourists in Germany per year. Ferries leave for Helsinki, Finland, Gedser, Denmark, Trelleborg, Sweden. Plane. The Rostock Large Airport offers connections to major German and international destinations. Regular flights to e.g. Munich are offered. The nearest larger international airports are in Hamburg and Berlin. There are also a number of airfields for smaller aircraft, e.g. in Perkshof. Notable people. This is a list of notable people who were born or lived in the city of Rostock. Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher, Prussian General Feldmarschall. Johann Georg Noll Dragendorf, chemist. Joachim Gauck, President of Germany since 18 March 2012. André Greipel, cyclist. Ernst Heinkel, aviation pioneer. Walter Hallstein, politician. Britta Kamrau, swimmer. Walter Kempowski, writer. Franziska Knupper, fashion model. Albrecht Kossel, recipient of 1910 Nobel Prize. Paul Martins, cyclist. Martyria, singer. Gustav Mee, physicist. Hans von Owen, physicist and engineer, constructor of the first operational jet engine. Rudolf Sohm, lawyer and church historian. Jan Ullrich, cyclist. Paul Walden, scientist. Dietmar Kueltz, physiologist at the University of California, Davis, expert on osmosensing. Ole Olsen, philanthropist.